Hi everybody, welcome to the dungeon. My name is Robin and today is a special lampworking demonstration. So the ISBG group, the Virginia Firebirds, asked me to be their October artist, and I thought that was so cool because it's like one of my favorite times of year. It's the time to make pumpkins and potions and magic is happening, so I'm really excited to be able to bring this demonstration to you guys. There are 4 different pieces that I'm going to do here. Some are off mandrel, some are on mandrel. So hopefully there is something here for everybody and it puts a smile on your face. It is a little lengthy of a video, so without further ado, we are going to get right into it. And on that note, I hope you're all doing safe and well. Happy holidays, happy Halloween, and I will see you next time in the dungeon. Okay, the first demo I'm going to do is this lovely little off mandrel pumpkin. And I am going to start with a large bundle of orange. You can use different shades of orange. You can use a single shade. It is all up to you. But if you're going to use a bundle of orange, then I would suggest you heat the tips up and just slowly start to push them together so they're all meeting at the top and everything is nice and melted. And once you have that done, you can start to kind of get a small amount of glass hot at the end to start forming a gather. And on that gather, I'm going to add the punty right to the bottom. And when you're adding a punty like this, you want to make sure that you don't push it in too deep, or you might end up taking all the glass off when you are finished. So be careful, don't push that punty in too far. Okay, so I'm heating everything up and kind of securing that punty a little bit. And now I'm just going to start to get as much glass as I can hot. I am twisting this one. However, I made some that weren't twisted at all and they look great. Okay, so I just want to cinch down that little area that I want to take off and remove the bundle. And now we are just going to start forming the pumpkin. So this will be the bottom half of the pumpkin that I'm working on right now. And I'm using a marble mold, which is very, very helpful to start forming the round shape that you're going to need. And once I have that shape done, I'm just going to use my thin butter knife and start to add a couple lines all the way around this pumpkin. I don't want to make them too deep, and when I'm finished, I'm going to heat things up and just flatten down the bottom. And I'll heat everything up again and add a few more lines. These will melt away quite a bit. I don't like to have like a whole bunch of like really crisp lines in these pumpkins. I like them to be very soft. I just pushed the bottom up just a little bit so I have somewhere to add my punty. And I will take the top punty off. Usually what I do is I'll heat the punty itself and maybe a little bit of the top of the glass, but the punty should come right out as long as you're heating up the mandrel enough. Now I'm just going to start heating everything up and cutting in the top. I'm just following the lines that I already have. I don't want this to be perfect. It's kind of haphazard. If you look at pumpkins, they're all different. So at this point, I'm heating everything up and the pattern will soften quite a bit. And now I will have a space at the very top to put my little stem. And I'm using a small piece of brown here, just a couple shades. And I just add a little dot to the top of the pumpkin, and then I will heat it and pull it out a little bit and then add some more to the top, and that'll give me a nice stem for the top of this. And then I'll just flatten it out a little bit, tweak it somewhat, and then I'll be ready to take this thing off the mandrel. I'm going to use my mini mashers, and I'll just, mess with the top a little bit more. And then using my tweezers, I'll preheat them, grab the very top and just gently heat the bottom until it's nice and smooth. And there is our pumpkin. All right, the second piece I'm gonna make is a little tree stump. So I have something for the cauldron to sit on. And I had to make two because the first one I deleted the video accidentally. So two is better than one in this final little sculpture anyway. It looks great. And I'm gonna do the same thing I did with the orange bundle for the pumpkin. I'm just heating up the ends of this bundle and pulling them all together so everything kind of remains stable and it's easy to start to heat up and melt into this big wad. But before we do that, I'm going to pull a stringer out, and this stringer is the same one I used for the pumpkin stems, and I'm also going to be using this for the tree rings at the end. All right, now the process of melting and melting and melting and melting and getting this into the biggest amount of glass that I can. And the marble mold helps a little bit because I'm just pushing those rods deeper and deeper into the melted part of the glass, and the marble mold can help a lot with that to get a larger amount and building it up. You know, this is a big amount of glass. I highly suggest you use a bundle of color for this. And as I work this down, I do slowly move my rubber band further and further away from the heat. But there is a point where it just, you can't pull that rubber band off anymore. So you want to be really careful and be aware of where the rubber band is. Now, at this point, what I'm doing is I'm just trying to roll things out and check to see, like, I'm looking for the height and the width for this tree stump. And it takes me a little bit to get there. I'll press the bottom down a little bit. And with most things that you do for the first or second time, sometimes you get your steps mixed up. Like this one in particular, I started to put my lines in way too early. So I'm gonna have to reestablish all those later on. So pretend that I didn't do that and just press a little concave area in the bottom of your tree trunk, flatten it down real nice, and that will set the diameter of the bottom, okay? And then I'm gonna add a small punty right to the center. And from there, now I can start to really gather all of the other colors onto itself. I am not twisting up anything really on this tree stump. I want everything to kind of melt down nice and straight. However, the rubber bands got in my way. And before the rubber band popped off, I just grabbed the bundle and, twisted it right off. And thankfully, that gave me the amount of glass that I needed to finish this piece. So I'm just trying to, pull it all together and get into more of a cylindrical shape, pressing the top, pressing the bottom, and rolling it out. I do use gravity as well. It will help to kind of stretch out that tree trunk. I don't want it to be a perfect cylinder. It's a tree trunk, so they're not perfectly round. But I do want to keep maintaining a flat top and a flat bottom. Okay, I'm rolling things out, and this will help to get me the length that I need. And from here, I can go ahead and start to add a little bit of my pattern after more pressing down. Oh, and before you do the pattern, let's finish up. I'm already getting ahead of myself. I want to put on the tree rings, and using that multicolor stringer really helps out a lot and gives this tree trunk more interest, especially if you're looking at it as a single object. All right, I'm going to flatten that top down a little bit, And before I put on the tree, the branch, I want to finally add all of my texture. And I'm just using my butter knife to do all the texture with. I do a little all over the top. I make sure I get some lines in the center, and I also make sure I get some lines in the bottom half as well. So it may take a little bit of time, but just spot heat and push where you need to. Some of these might go away a little later on, and you might find yourself having to reestablish some of these lines throughout making this piece, which is completely normal. All right, so at this point, I want to start getting a little bit of a gather ready to put my branch on the side. And it's funny because I kept having to remind myself that I'm working everything kind of upside down. And I want to make sure that the tree branch goes upwards to the top. So gravity really is going to help me out here. And I'm just going to continue to add little dots of color until I feel like I have enough and the length is there. And having this little branch just makes this tree trunk look so much cooler. I'm going to flatten it down and just shape it up somewhat. I'll use a pair of tweezers to kind of round it out. I don't want it perfectly round though. No trees are perfectly round, I don't think. So let's just go ahead and make it, more interesting. All right, on the very edge of that branch, I'm adding a little swirl of my stringer again. And from flattening it down, the whole thing went south on me. So I had to lift it up, use gravity to help me get that branch to go where I wanted it to. All right, I'm just about done here. I'm gonna flatten that top a little bit more. Pieces like this, it's really a constantly tweaking, flattening, putting your lines in, and making sure everything is exactly where you want it before you put it away. So it's important that the top and the bottom are completely parallel and flat to each other, or the cauldron won't stand up, it'll fall off. So that was a big thing for me to make sure everything was nice and straight. And here, when I take the mandrel away and just let it sit for a quick second, kind of helped me to figure out where I am. And I'm happy with it. I'm gonna just pull this out with my mini mashers and put it in the oven. Okay, for my next little demonstration, we need some bones. And what I'm gonna do here is just heat up a really nice big glob of glass with ivory. Ivory is a great color for bones. And you just need a really big gather, and then you're gonna pull out the other end using a mandrel. That'll allow you to heat a little bit more up. And really what I'm doing here is just pulling out a very, very thick stringer, okay? It's a short, thick stringer. And I just kind of like hover out. I'm not constantly pulling. I'm just kind of waiting for it to set up, and then I kind of give it, pull it taut at that point. And when I take off the ivory rod, let some of that glass fall down, and that will give you the first end of your bone. And then all you need to do is add another dot to the other side. Let that cool down while you heat your tweezers up. And as long as your tweezers are nice and hot, you will be able to grab this bone without it breaking in half. And then just heat up the other end, and the punty might fall right off, so be careful. And then I just switch the bone to the other side of my other hand, and I will let some of that glass fall down, and then add my dot and heat that up and put it right in the oven. There is our bone. Make a whole bunch of these. And then I'm gonna cut some of them up to put in our magic cauldron, and I will use the rest as just some more decoration. Okay, now for our final demonstration, the magic cauldron, the one we've all been waiting for. I'm gonna start this one out with a whole bunch of black. And I kind of want it to be the same size as one of the pumpkins. So ahead of time, I put a pumpkin down on top of the tree stump just to kind of make sure I had my size down. Because if it's too big, it may not sit correctly on the tree stump. And if it's too small, well, it just won't look right. So I decided that I would just check the size here real quick after I roll it out with one of the pumpkins. And I like that size, I like the length. So I'm going to go ahead and start from there by adding my wraps. And I'm just going to go ahead and add 4 wraps. And then off of those wraps, I will start to build up even more. And when I add these wraps, I don't know if a lot of people work this way, but it helps me out a lot because I can kind of mock up the shape. I know that the center of this cauldron is wider than the top and bottom. So when I am building up these discs, I will make sure that the 2 center discs are wider than the top and bottom as well. And that will kind of help me to get the amount of glass that I need. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so this is what I mean. I'm adding those 2 wraps to the center. And even from here, if I draw a circle around the whole thing, that's kind of the shape I'm going for. All right, now I am going to just start heating everything up. And when I am heating in discs like this, I'll heat on the sides, trying to get into the edges, like right at the bottom of these. And they'll slowly start to melt in, and any air, it will be pushed out. So I never worry about trapping bubbles using this method. And then from there, I am just going to start setting the bottom into the right shape. And I notice that my marble mold, the 1-inch marble mold, is the perfect shape that I need to set the bottom of this cauldron. Now the top needs a little extra glass, so I will add more color to the top half. I'm almost going from the center and I want it nice and straight to the top. So I'm heating everything up, and I will repetitively go into the marble mold and I will shape up the sides until I finally get to the right form. And here, after I do the sides, I will go ahead and go back into the marble mold so the sides don't get too wide, but I'm still, cooling that bottom down in order to set that, that shape. And then now that I'm done with the bottom, I will just work the top half and start to heat all of that up really nice. Maybe throw it in the marble mold one more time, but really it needs to be rolled out on that top half. And the whole time I'm doing this, I'm thinking, what does a cauldron look like? I know the top has to go in a little bit, so I slightly angle it inwards at the top. And even here, I kind of start to see my shape forming, and I'm starting to like this. I just need a little bit more angling at the top and a little flattening, and I am just about there. I'll flatten that top one more time after I heat everything up, and this is the final shape that I went with. Now, before I can move on with the cauldron, I want to add any kind of decoration. And what I wanted to do is have some kind of, like a background like the Milky Way. So I'm using my colloidal silver cane with a center of the double helix Terra Nova. And boy, this is just looks so cool. Even if you have clear on the inside, if it's a clear colloidal cane with silver, that'll look great too. I just thought it was perfect. Instead of just having a black kettle, I thought it would be really nice to have this spacey effect. Heating that in and doing my best to maintain the shape that I already had. And at this point, I am ready to start to add the lip, the wrap of the lip around that top. And I don't want to add it too high, and I don't want to put it down too low. Hopefully you'll find just that right spot that it needs to be, and you want to wrap it from one end all the way to the other until it meets itself again, And sometimes where it meets itself can kind of get a little too much. So I'm going to pull that off, heat it down some more, and then go ahead and use my butter knife to just round everything out. Or straighten or crisp it up, let's say. And then I'll just heat the top, flatten that down a little bit. But now that I'm done with the with that lip wrap, I want to stay away from it. Don't overheat it. Okay, now for the potion. This is a white cane that I put the leaf green on top, or grass green, any kind of green. You could use any color, really, a violet or a red, depending on what color potion you want. And I'm just going to start by adding a ton of dots all over the place and get all the way up to the edge of the lip. If you want to, you can even have some of it kind of bubbling over on the side. And once I have all of the potion in there, I'm going to heat it up a little bit until it softens. And then I'll go ahead and add the handles. And I'm just using a black stringer, a thick black stringer for the handles. And as soon as I lay them down, I will heat it up and just gently flatten the top of the handles down until they're a little closer to the cauldron itself. And I will go ahead and repeat that same thing on the other side. Trying to get the handles completely on both sides. You may need a little tiny helper dot to help you with that. If not, you know, like I do, I just kind of wing it and hope that it matches both sides. It's not perfect, but it's close. And then I just used a graphite rod to round it out a little bit more. Okay, we're almost done here. All we need to do is add the feet and throw some bones in this cauldron. And I put the feet on in a nice, in 3 areas. So no matter what, it will fall and hold itself on those 3 spots. So it's 3 feet. But before I turn everything around, I want to make sure that the cauldron is actually going to sit on those feet. So I notice that I need to have a little bit more on there, because if the cauldron isn't sitting on the feet, it's not going to work. So I need to make those a little bit bigger. And this time seemed to work out great. And I'm just kind of checking everything right now. And then I'll turn my mandrel around and we're almost done. We just need to add some bones in here. And all I'm doing here is just heating up where I am going to stick the bone to. If it doesn't work the first time, just get it hotter, get it more hot. And then stick the bone right in there. Whatever you do, when you do this, do not heat the bones themselves. Just heat where they're sticking to, or they will just start to flip-flop all over the place. The glass is going to be hot and it will travel up that bone a little bit, but don't worry about heating up the actual bones. You notice how it's already moving. Just heat everything that you can, and then when you're ready, put the whole thing away. And you notice the bones are not very hot because I can still move it with my finger. All right, you guys, that's our demo. I hope you enjoyed. And on that note, we will see you next time in the dungeon. Happy holiday.